this point, it's really gravy. I think that it's important for them not to push all their chips in and then limit their ceiling. So I think it's a great hire. I agree with you, and I'm really interested to see what the Kings can do next season, especially if there's some shakeups on some of the other Western Conference teams.
Oh, for sure. Now, I know it's unlike us to get into the heat checks right at the top of the show, but we felt like it was warranted. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of the program, where we discuss the last few days the NBA playoffs began, let's have a simple question to ask you. Do you miss LeBron James? I mean, I kind of forget he's not in the playoffs. It's been that good so far.
Yeah, I can't say that I have to the same degree. There's been, I think I'll miss it more towards the finals, where there's not going to be that kind of LeBron team to love or to hate. And I think that's what's going to be a little bit less fun. But right now, there's still been so much LeBron stuff. There's been so much LeBron talk until just now, and there's still talk of will LeBron make an NBA, an All NBA third team and stuff like that. So I can't say I miss him yet, Jason.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I don't really miss him either. I just thought with the whole Lakers news, like I'm sure he's probably feeling some type of way right now about not being in the playoffs and having to watch it on television. But all of those things aside, I mean, I know, at the time we're recording this podcast, each team has pretty much played one game. Two series have gone 2 games, and then there's 3 more game 2s tonight, and then 3 more game 2s tomorrow night. But man, has the action been good so far. Where do you want to begin with this?
I mean, come on, Jason. We have to go to the most interesting series so far, which of course is the Nets and Sixers. So, Jason, obviously, tough game 2 after a phenomenal game 1 performance. I want to get your thoughts on the way this series has played out.
Well, first of all, I've been saying this for weeks. The Nets are playing with house money. They got into the playoffs. They have a young team on the rise, a young head coach on the rise. Playoff debuts across the board for D'Angelo Russell, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, Spencer Dinwiddie played in one other game before this. Joe Harris was buried on the bench during Cleveland's final run 4 years ago. So for the nucleus of this Nets team, this is the beginning. Game 1, fantastic effort across the board. Russell came out, dominated, was not afraid of the moment. Karis LeVert came out, exactly the same. Dinwiddie, another force. Ed Davis, you could not say enough good things about him. I know he sprained his ankle and he was limited in game 2, but the fact that he had 12 points, 16 rebounds, outscored Simmons, JJ Redick, and Tobias Harris combined in game 1. It was just an all-around dominant effort by the Brooklyn Nets. They came in and they stole home court advantage. Now, before we get into game 2, I just want to touch on a couple things in game 1. First off, Joel Embiid, game time decision. I think he'll be a game time decision the entire series. When he's in, the Nets can't guard him. He hurts them. You got Jared Allen, 3 quick fouls in the first 6 minutes of game 1. Dominant force, but he was afraid to shoot. Simmons looked timid out there. Jimmy Butler, if he didn't score 36, I think it would have been a 22-point net victory in game 1, just like the Sixers came back with full force in game 2. But real quick, I just want to get your take on this cell phone situation with Amir Johnson. Okay, he was inactive in the game, but he was dressed. And during the game, on his phone, showing something on his cell phone to Joel Embiid, as the Sixers were losing, and Embiid's pointing and laughing, and Johnson ended up getting fined by the team. And if you notice in game 2, he was not in uniform. He was in a suit. So for that, real quick, I'm making Amir Johnson my 0 of the week because it's the playoffs. He's been there before with Toronto and Boston. He should know the ropes. I get it. He might be frustrated. He's not playing. He said that his daughter's sick, and I don't want to ever talk about another man's family. But still, you're at work. And I get it. Draymond Green came out with a tweet and said, well, don't you check your phone at work? To, I think it was Keith Smith or someone from the NBA that was talking about that. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on game 1 and then Amir Johnson on his cell phone during the game.
Well, I thought game 1, there were a lot of things, if you were a Nets fan, you could take away and be really positive about. And some of them continued really into game 2, in spite of the fact that they lost. The biggest thing was just that the guards for the Nets were pretty much unguardable the whole game. I mean, he played. This is Kenny Atkinson, of course. He played Dinwiddie and Russell about 30 minutes each. Couldn't guard them. Played Karis LeVert over 20 minutes. No one could guard him. I thought really part of where game 2 went wrong is that they just didn't put the pedal down. They didn't put their feet on the necks of the Sixers, and a big part of that to me was just not being aggressive enough with those guys. They have mismatches, and if you look at the game, the Sixers just don't have anyone who can guard those guys. The other thing was that Ed Davis was just a man in that game. I mean, he just was killing the Sixers on the boards, and obviously, Jason, as we talked about, he wasn't completely healthy for game 2, and that really, really hurt the Nets because Jared Allen is a great player, but he just doesn't have the size and the post defense to really stop Joel Embiid. And it means to me Kenny Atkinson is going to be forced to play small lineups and really trap and double team Embiid every time he gets the ball.
Oh, for sure. And I'm glad Embiid's playing. One, you don't wish ill health on anybody, but he makes the Sixers a better team, and it's a bigger challenge for the Nets. I know he dominated game 2 in limited minutes. He's been an absolute force, and he's not shooting. If he starts to shoot and ends up with a high-low game, I mean, he's the best center in basketball. And it's a good litmus test for Jared Allen. Jared Allen played much better in game 2 against Embiid when Embiid was attacking the post a little bit more. So that was encouraging to see. But Embiid's the catalyst. As good as Jimmy Butler is, the Sixers go as Embiid goes. And it's crazy how as dominant as Embiid was in the first half, and the Sixers went up by as many as 13, the Nets came storming back, and it took a lackluster third quarter where they gave up a franchise playoff high 51 points to the Sixers, and they took a commanding lead, a lead they would never relinquish, to win game 2. But I think the turning point in that game was the offensive foul, the flagrant one called on Joel Embiid when he elbowed Jared Allen in the face. I'm not going to sit here and say it was on purpose. I know it's the playoffs. I know the physicality is elevated, and I know the refs are letting them play. But at the same time, that was a forceful elbow from Joel Embiid. I think that should have been a flagrant 2. Now, before you look at me and say, oh, Jason, you're a Nets fan. You're biased. Oh, my God, stop talking about that. You're being a baby. Stop whining. Jared Allen almost got concussed. That's how bad the hit was. I think it should have been a flagrant 2 and an ejection. Had that happen, I think the Nets win game 2, and they take a commanding lead in the series. That elbow could change the whole trajectory of this series, because now if the Sixers come back and retake home court in either game 3 or game 4 in Brooklyn, the Nets are done. And that elbow could have been the turning point.
Well, I'll be honest, I didn't think either his foul or the subsequent Rodion's Kuruk's foul were flagrant. I would have just liked to have seen them let the players play. I'm never a huge fan of the flagrant fouls unless someone's really trying to hurt someone else, and I don't think in either case they were. I think both guys were a little bit over aggressive. In my opinion, it's just a let them play situation. But you said it. Embiid just absolutely was taken apart. The whole Nets team really down low. There were no answers for it, and this is where we do see some of the cracks with Kenny Atkinson as a coach. As an in-game coach, he still struggles a little bit with adjustments, and it didn't feel like they really found an answer for the Sixers going down low and just pounding the ball inside on them. I really think, Jason, we're going to have to see more of the zone. We're going to have to see more double teams, and they're going to have to do hard double teams. They can't do these soft doubles where they come partway through. It gives Embiid way too much time. And just the truth is that Allen just can't play with him down there, Jason. And it's, look, I am a huge Jared Allen fan. I mean, I talked to you and to our friend Pooch about how I thought he could become like an all-star level player in the next couple years. I think he's a great guy. I just don't think that he has the size or the strength to handle Embiid down there. And he doesn't have the experience in terms of defending the post. And it's just a really tough matchup for him. And I think Atkinson has to understand that. He has to go small, and he has to send the hard doubles against Embiid when he gets the ball to take the ball out of his hands and try to help when he can off some of the non-shooters that the Sixers have. Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, those guys, if they have the ball out there, that's where you absolutely positively have to be doubling off your man and making those guys beat you outside. And At the very least, they have to reset the shot clock. And likewise, guys like Jonah Bolden, James Ennis, Jonathan Simmons, even TJ McConnell to a degree. I mean, these are guys that I think you have to just kind of make them shoot and dare them to shoot the ball. I mean, it's really going to be tough for the Nets to win the series if they keep letting Embiid just dominate them down low and get such good looks.
Well, the Sixers are the more talented team. I think they have the best starting five in the NBA now, especially with DeMarcus Cousins down in Golden State. I mean, top to bottom, they have the best starting lineup. They have a lot of talent. They just have no bench and they don't have as much chemistry. So I think the Nets could definitely take advantage of that. But the Sixers finally looked like the Sixers. It took them, a game and a half pretty much to come alive. But still, I've been saying this all along. It's house money for the Nets. The house won big in game two. But the Nets are going back to Brooklyn for game three and the game four on Saturday with home court advantage. I'm going to game three. So it's a good
Oh
thing we won't be
yeah.
recording a podcast this weekend because I will not have a voice. But I will be at Barclays Center Thursday with Christian. We are going to have a great old time cheering on the Nets. First playoff game in 4 years. I really am hoping all Net fans who listen to this podcast be ready Thursday night. Be ready to go. Be ready to support your team. Now let's make this a series. I said Sixers in 7. I'm not going to lie, Nets fans. When halftime came in game two, I said, wow, the Nets are down a point. They're right here. If
Yep.
they could steal this, they might have a chance to win this freaking thing. That's how excited I've been getting. But trying to stay even keeled. The Sixers are a very good team. They've been working at it for a while. I think Embiid and Simmons have a little growing up to do. I was telling you this before the show. I'm going to say it on air as well. I think, Embiid kind of laughing off the whole flagrant situation and just the fact that he was laughing with Amir Johnson and Ben Simmons, talking crap about Jared Dudley and calling Rodions Kurucs the other kid. I think this could be a budding rivalry. Everyone's clamoring for Knicks Nets. You know what? It takes a playoff series. It takes chippy battles to establish a rivalry. We might see Nets Sixers before we see Nets Knicks, and that depends on how the rest of the series shakes out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But with that, Jason, let's kind of jump to a few of the other series and just get a few thoughts on these before we go to our heroes and zeros. So, what did you take away from Game One of the Pistons and Bucks series?
They're lost without Blake Griffin. I really kind of rest our case there. It's a shame because he didn't play the last couple of games of the regular season where the Pistons kind of backed into that 8th spot and took advantage of that huge come from behind win over Memphis, who had 8 guys down, and Dwayne Wade and the Miami Heat are out. But without Blake Griffin, I mean, they're lifeless. I think it's going to be a warm up. I mean, I called a Bucks sweep. And Ben, I mean, do you want to change your stance now without Blake Griffin? Do you still think the Pistons are going to get a game?
So I thought they were going to take a game with Griffin. Without Griffin in there, I think this could very, very easily turn into a sweep. And speaking of sweeps, Jason, I had chosen the Toronto Raptors to sweep the Orlando Magic, and everything was looking hunky-dory for a good chunk of the game. And suddenly, Jason, I checked the score, and the Magic were right there with the Raptors. Ultimately, DJ Augustine comes in, lights it up, was one of the best players in the game. The Magic improbably steal the first game and home court advantage from the Raptors. Now, the Raptors are leading by nearly 20 points at this point. And I do feel like they're going to rebound. But, Jason, were you surprised to see the Magic put up such a fight?
I mean, I picked them to cover, if we're being completely honest with each other, but I wasn't expecting them to win. I thought, as you said, Augustine was lights out. But there's a little something in sports called market correction, and you saw both the Nets and the Magic shock the basketball world and take 1-0 series leads on the road. You see Philly respond in game two with a 22-point victory. Toronto's up 19 right now, midway through the third quarter. Now, we know after the Golden State Clipper game that no lead is safe, but I think it's pretty fair to say that by the time this podcast runs, the series will be tied 1-1. But still, the Magic are going home with home court advantage. Toronto really has to play well on the road. And I think if I didn't have Amir Johnson as my zero of the week, I was gunning towards Kyle Lowry, who went scoreless in game one. You can't have that when you have Kawhi Leonard with an aging Marcus Gasol and an aging Kyle Lowry. And that's what Masai Ujiri kind of put all his chips on the table for. Not the best look. So Toronto better turn this thing around for sure.
I think they will, though, Jason. I mean, they have a lot of talent on the roster, and I think they're going to be just fine. I'm really not all that worried about them. But jumping to the next series, this is the one that I